I once sold a company to a New York private equity firm. They handed me the check the same day, but my first job barely paid. I was 12 sweeping a toy shop floor in South Africa. The owner taught me 2 lessons there. They are why that sale happened. And if you own a business, they decide what you walk away with. I am James Bell. Over 50 years, I built and sold 5 companies on 3 continents. This channel is where I show you how I did it and how you can do the same with yours. This is chapter 1 of my story. I want to walk you through the apprenticeship that shaped me. The 2 rules I learned at 12. I still live by them at 67. The man who taught them to me, and the day at 21 when I sold my first ownership stake. Here is the truth about selling well. What makes a business ready is usually something the owner learned decades earlier. Mine began in a small shop called Slater's Wholesale Cycles. East London is a port city on the coast of South Africa. In the early 1970s, it was a small market, far from the big cities, far from anywhere really. And that is why I learned what I learned. In a small market, you do not get to specialize. You learn every job or there is nobody else to do it. The shop sold toys and bicycles. The man who owned it was Mr. Winspear. He became one of the most important people in my life. I was 12 when I started. Every Friday afternoon, all day Saturday, every school holiday for 6 years. What he gave me was an apprenticeship in the old sense. He did not just hand me a broom. He taught me the business. He let me work the counter. He let me read the books. He let me hear how he talked to a supplier and how he handled a customer who was unhappy. And he taught me 2 rules. They have carried me through 5 companies. Rule 1, always have the best accountant and the best lawyer money can buy. Even when you cannot afford them, you pay them before you pay yourself. Your books and your contracts are in order before you draw a single dollar. Rule 2, you over-deliver at every stage of your career. The junior clerk, the senior director, the owner. It does not matter. You always do more than is asked. You arrive earlier than you have to. You stay later than you have to. Those 2 rules were taught to a 12-year-old in a toy shop. They are the same rules that made my business sellable to New York private equity 50 years later. Let me spend a minute on that small market point. It matters more than it sounds. I could not specialize, so I learned to negotiate with suppliers. I learned to forecast inventory. I learned how a window display moves product. I learned to read a profit and loss statement before I learned to drive. In a big city, I would have been pushed into one function, sales or operations or finance. Big markets reward the specialist. Small markets reward the generalist. And here is what matters when you go to sell. The buyer is not buying a specialist. The buyer is buying a system. Finance, operations, sales, and service, all working together. The owner who understands every piece is the owner a buyer can actually read. Everything I learned in that shop is in my free playbook. It is called the Exit Readiness Playbook. It shows you how to turn those lessons into a business a buyer pays full price for. The link is right below. If a sale is anywhere on your horizon, get it before you watch the rest. At 18, I left school. In South Africa then, every young man did 2 years of national service. Before I went in, I took a short job at a bank. The bank paid me through my service, so I was meant to return to it. Mr. Winspear had a different idea. He came to me and he said, come back to the shop permanently, and I will give you a share of the business, 1.5%. You will pay for it in time and in earnings, working the floor, learning the operation. I took the offer. I left the bank. I went back to the shop. I was now part owner of the place where I had swept the floor. That is the day I learned what equity really means. Not the idea of it, the thing itself. The difference between earning a wage and owning a piece. 6 months later, the business was approached. A chain of toy stores out of Durban wanted to expand across the country. They were called Reggie's. They had 6 stores. They wanted to plant a flag in our city. And to do that, they wanted to buy ours. Mr. Winspear came to me again. He laid out the choice. We could stay independent and fight a national chain moving into our town, or we could sell into them, and I could grow inside a much bigger company. The decision was mine. I want to pause here. This is one of the most important moments in any owner's life. A bigger company comes to buy you, and you have to decide, am I selling or am I joining? If a buyer is at your door today, you are in that same conversation. The questions never change. Can I grow inside their company in a way I cannot grow alone? Are their values close enough to mine? And is the price one I can live with for the rest of my life? I met the buyer. His name was Bernard. He owned Reggie's. I came away certain I could grow inside his group, so I went back to Mr. Winspear and I said yes. I sold my 1.5%. It was not a lot of money, but I was now part of a national company with a future I could not have built alone. 6 months into the new role, I got a phone call. They needed someone to open the inland region. Pretoria, the capital, build the first store, build the warehouse, hire the team, sign the leases. I had just gotten married. My wife and I had been married 3 months. The call came on a Monday. They asked when I could leave. I said, when do you need me? They said, tomorrow. The next day I was in Pretoria. I opened the region. I built the warehouse. I hired the team. In over 7 years, Reggie's grew from 6 stores to more than 100. I was made a director at 21. I was the youngest person in every room. Everyone else was in their 40s and 50s. But the foundation was already there. The Winspear Foundation. The 2 rules. Best accountant, best lawyer. Over-deliver. That is how a 21-year-old runs the inland region of a 100-store chain. If you run a business today, think about your own apprenticeship. Wherever it happened, whoever it was with, that is the version of you a buyer ends up buying. So here is the principle this whole channel comes back to. Run your business as if you are going to sell it tomorrow, even if you never intend to. In practice, that means 3 things. Treat yourself as employed by the business on a real salary with clean books. Pay for the best financial and legal minds you can afford, even before you pay yourself, and reinvest the profit back into the business instead of living beyond it. Mr. Winspear taught me the first 2 at 12. The third came later. That is the next chapter. In chapter 2, I will tell you what happened next. Reggie's grew from 6 stores into a national chain. We took it public. Then my partner and I bought it back in a management buyout. And in 1993, Toys R Us came knocking from New Jersey. I took a $10 million check that year. That chapter goes live in 3 weeks. The Exit Readiness Playbook, with every principle from this episode, is free. The link is right below. I will see you in chapter 2.